Imagine a man so wealthy that his travels caused entire economies to collapse. Gold lost its value. Prices skyrocketed. Nations struggled for years to recover. This isn't a myth. It isn't an exaggeration. This is the true story of Mansa Musa, the richest human being to ever walk the earth. When people today talk about wealth, they mention names like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, or oil billionaires from the Middle East. Their fortunes seem unimaginable. But history records one man whose wealth was so vast that modern economists cannot even calculate it accurately. A 14th century African king ruling an empire most people were never taught about in school. A man whose riches reshaped global markets. His name was Mansa Musa, ruler of the Mali Empire, and his story redefines what wealth truly means. To understand Mansa Musa, you must first understand the empire behind the gold. He ruled the Mali Empire in West Africa, a vast territory in parts of present-day Mali, Senegal, Guinea, and Niger. But territory alone did not make Mali powerful. What made Mali unstoppable was this single, staggering fact. Over half of the world's known gold supply passed through its control. In an era where gold wasn't just decoration, it was currency, it was political power. Mansa Musa owned the mines, the trade routes, and the taxation system that controlled its flow. Historians have tried to put a number on Mansa Musa's wealth. The most conservative estimates place it at over $400 billion in today's money, but the truth is more unsettling. His wealth was, in a very real sense, uncountable. Why? Because he didn't just own money. He controlled the source of money itself, the gold mines, the critical salt trade routes, the international commerce that stretched across Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. If today's billionaires are players in the game, Mansa Musa owned the entire game board. This reality became undeniable to the world in 1324, when Mansa Musa decided to perform Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca. But this was no ordinary journey. He traveled with a procession of 60,000 people. His personal retinue included 12,000 enslaved attendants, each carrying solid gold staffs. Following them were 80 camels, each loaded with over 100 kilograms of pure gold dust. The caravan stretched for miles, a river of gold flowing across the Sahara. As Mansa Musa passed through cities like Cairo, Medina, and Mecca, he did something unprecedented. He gave his gold away freely. He distributed it to the poor on the streets, to merchants in the markets, to local rulers, and to scholars. Gold flowed like water. It was an act of piety and generosity on an imperial scale. But this generosity had consequences no one expected. So much new gold flooded the local markets that its value completely collapsed. Inflation exploded. In Cairo, one of the world's most important economic centers at the time, prices rose dramatically, and the economy was destabilized for over a decade. This remains the only recorded time in history where a single individual caused international inflation simply by being too rich and too generous. Later, on his return journey, Mansa Musa reportedly tried to fix the damage by borrowing gold back from Cairo's lenders at high interest, but even he couldn't fully undo what his wealth had accidentally done. However, Mansa Musa was far more than just a tycoon. He was a deeply religious man, an educated leader, and a brilliant strategist. After returning from his legendary Hajj, he invested heavily in knowledge, faith, and architecture. He commissioned the construction of mosques, universities, and libraries across his empire. Most famously, he transformed the city of Timbuktu into a global center of learning and culture. At its peak, the Sankar University in Timbuktu housed hundreds of thousands of manuscripts covering science, mathematics, law, astronomy, and philosophy. While much of Europe was still struggling through the Middle Ages, Timbuktu was hosting intellectuals from across the Islamic world, becoming a beacon of scholarship and progress. Before this, European cartographers had barely acknowledged West Africa on their maps. But Mansa Musa's journey changed everything. In the famous Catalan Atlas of 1375, he is depicted seated on a throne, holding a golden orb, the clearest symbol of wealth the medieval world had ever seen. Europe finally realized Africa was not a land of mystery. Africa was powerful. And at its center sat one unimaginably wealthy king. So why, despite his incredible influence, is Mansa Musa so rarely mentioned in mainstream history education? Perhaps because history often remembers conquerors over builders, colonizers over African kings. His empire eventually declined and fell into the shadow of rising European powers. But Mansa Musa's legacy lives on. He proved that true wealth can shape the world not just through domination, but through infrastructure, education, and cultural exchange. When we look back, today's billionaires build rockets. Mansa Musa built civilizations. They chase influence. He accidentally rewrote global economics. He didn't just have money. He had so much wealth that the world itself couldn't handle it. Mansa Musa wasn't just the richest man in history. He represents the moment humanity learned that unlimited wealth can quite literally bend reality. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as incredible as we did, please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more hidden histories.